as we wrote earlier today, and as you'll read in Playmakers, and as Charean has already read, the Cowboys thing almost happened 3 years ago. 3 years ago this week, it almost happened, where the Cowboys were ready to do the deal with the New Orleans Saints for Sean Payton. Sean Payton was going to go coach the Cowboys. It was done. It was happening. Then Anthony Davis, formerly of the New Orleans Pelicans, informed the team he was not going to re-sign. He wanted to trade, and Mickey Loomis, who was the executive VP of football operations with the Pelicans at the time, he was also the GM and still is the GM of the Saints. He told Sean, I can't be the common thread between these two huge names leaving New Orleans. We just can't do it. Later that year, Payton signed an extension that runs through 2024. He's got 3 years left on it, but that is how close it came to happening. And but for Anthony Davis deciding the day that he did to leave, or at least make it known he wanted to leave the Pelicans, and he was later traded to the Lakers in July of 2019, Sean Payton would be, heading into year 4 as head coach of the Cowboys, and possibly would be playing right now, possibly playing this weekend against the Rams, the 49ers, or someone else.
There's a lot of excitement right now in Dallas, Mike, but I was surprised that some of it was tempered by people pointing out, actually, that Sean Payton's record is almost exactly the same as Mike McCarthy's, and it is. 7 division titles for both, 1 Super Bowl title for both, and there are questions about why shouldn't Sean Payton take heat for winning 1 Super Bowl with Drew Brees if Mike McCarthy is taking heat for winning 1 Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. Here's the difference, I think, Mike, in my mind between these two coaches. Let's go back to last year, Mike McCarthy's first year. They had a really good team, almost the same team they have this year, minus Micah Parsons and some differences. They blame it on COVID. They didn't get to install what they needed to install in the offseason. I get all that. Dak Prescott gets hurt in week 5. They weren't good before that. They start 4 quarterbacks. They're terrible. Fast forward to this year. Saints had the hurricane. They had to depart for Dallas. They had to play their first game on the road, which they won, by the way, against the Packers. Didn't play their first home game in New Orleans until October. Played 4 quarterbacks the year after Drew Brees. Jameis Winston gets hurt for the year. They have a winning record. And again, aside from the 49ers pulling that out against the Rams, they're in the playoffs. That, to me, is the difference between these two coaches. Sean Payton can make lemonade out of lemons. Mike McCarthy hasn't shown that he can make lemonade out of lemons.
Well, I look at it this way. Sean Payton talked during his press conference about interviewing with Ted Thompson, the late GM of the Green Bay Packers in 2006. Yeah. That was the year that the Packers hired Mike McCarthy. And Payton went to New Orleans for his interview with the Saints, found out that night the Packers were going in a different direction. What if the Packers, who had Aaron Rodgers on the roster at the time, and Brett Favre, had hired Sean Payton? Would they have won only 1 Super Bowl in the past 16 years with Aaron Rodgers and Sean Payton working together? I don't think so, because, look, Drew Brees works with us. And I think Drew Brees would acknowledge that Aaron Rodgers is a more physically gifted quarterback than Drew Brees ever was. Drew Brees got the absolute most out of his God-given abilities, and I respect anyone who does that. Drew Brees exceeded his God-given abilities with what he accomplished in the National Football League. Aaron Rodgers is more gifted. Aaron Rodgers is a better overall quarterback from the standpoint of arm strength, everything. Now, look, nobody runs a precision offense like Drew Brees, so that may be a spot where he would have an advantage. But I think Aaron Rodgers and Sean Payton over the last 16 years would have won more together than McCarthy and Rodgers or Brees and Payton. I just think that's the basic reality. So now, and look, I think, and this is nothing against Mike McCarthy. I've said a few times in the past week or so, Charean, there's a small handful of great coaches in the NFL, and there's everybody else. And the great coaches are driven to work, and their level of attention to detail is incredible. And Payton mentioned that. That kind of came out today. He talked about staying up till 2 a.m. every night, the attention to detail that is critical to do the job right. I know from covering the league for 20 years, there's a difference between the way Payton does it, there's a difference between the way others do it. And I think Cowboys fans, and this isn't, hey, go fire Mike McCarthy and hire Sean Payton day, but if any Cowboys fan is worried about Sean Payton not being better than McCarthy as a coach, not taking the team to greater heights, that shouldn't be a concern. the question is, how quickly could Sean Payton take this team to a Super Bowl and win one?
Yeah, that's exactly the question, Mike. And this is a team that has cap problems, too. They're not quite as bad as the Saints, but they do have some cap problems. But they look like a team that's built to win, and they'll be built to win in 2023. They have the quarterback tied up, and they'll have some of the young players tied up for the future. They'll still have Micah Parsons and some of those guys that are really important to that defense. So they do look like a team that he could go into and win a championship with if he likes Dak Prescott as his franchise quarterback. And if he does, and he thinks he can win with Dak Prescott, they can put the rest of the pieces together for him to make that happen. But I think he's a very good coach. I think he's the best offensive mind in football. He and Kyle Shanahan with the plays that they call. I just think they're really, really good at it. And if I'm the Cowboys or any other team, if I'm one of these teams looking for a coach, I'm going to make a call just to make sure that Sean Payton doesn't want to coach this year.
Now, again, a deal would have to be done with the Saints to arrange for compensation even before the call could be made. I don't think you could even make a phone call to Sean Payton without having an understanding as to what the compensation for the Saints would be. I think it would be a blatant tampering violation. And even if he's out for a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, the Cowboys would have to, or anyone else would have to compensate the New Orleans Saints for hiring Sean Payton. But obviously, the more time that he's out, the less that the Saints would probably get. Time was the key. Today is the time. Sean Payton was asked during the press conference, why now, for his decision to step aside.
I just felt like this season it was challenging for everyone. But, man, I felt like it was time. I felt like it was time. You know, I kind of knew maybe heading into training camp this might. But you don't share that with anyone. You think, well, let's see how the season goes, and we're working hard. And I felt the time was right for me. I felt the time was right. And it's something that I've been thinking about. You know, I think that, look, you have close friends in the industry. I've lost a few close friends in this industry in the last 2 or 3 years. And also, you know, forget football. There's other things, spending more time. There's a lot of sacrifices you make. And so not many get to choose their terms. And I looked at it as an opportunity also to see my kids more, to travel some more, to get in better shape. There's an attrition 2 a.m, and I know I hear people say, well, you don't have, yeah, I get it, but I need to. That's the way it works for me. And I think the attention to details are so important that it can be exhausting. And so I felt, as this season was winding down, that it was the right thing. And then the last week and a half, yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
He did a good job of holding it together and not crying. He came very close. He stopped. He gathered himself. He must have seen that when he researched how not to cry last night before doing the press conference today. But, look, it's got to be difficult. 16 years, that's almost a generation. That is a long period of time. And to step away from that into the great unknown, into not really knowing what's next, I'm sure he's got a plan. Sean Payton's not the kind of guy who doesn't have a plan. But whether or not he's got something definitely lined up is a different issue, and he will be in demand, and there will be networks that want to hire him. And there was a report that Amazon would like to hire him to replace Troy Aikman if Aikman leaves for Amazon. And Fox would like to hire him if Troy Aikman goes to Amazon. But I don't know that they'd want Sean Payton just for a year or two as the number one analyst on Fox. I think they'd want him to be all in for that without an understanding going in that he could indeed leave to coach. And here's the other side of it, too. And I don't know if John Gruden had many issues with this when he was in the broadcast booth. But if there's a thought Sean Payton's coming back as soon as next year, if he's doing game broadcasts, teams aren't going to be real thrilled about him being in the production meetings. And I suspect he probably wasn't real thrilled when guys were in production meetings who had connections to teams. You know, there was an issue years ago when Brian Billick was working for Fox and Mike Smith was the coach of the Falcons. Billick is Smith's brother-in-law, and I know there was concern with other NFC rivals in the division, like the Saints, about Billick being in the building and meeting with coaches and picking brains and knowing things about the Saints when his brother-in-law was the coach of the Falcons. And it's one of the reasons why Billick doesn't talk to him anymore, because I had the audacity to point out that people had that concern. How dare I point out that people actually had that concern? How dare I not ignore that?
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.